I'm sitting next to Brian Smith, and Brian Smith is a photographer. But he's not just a photographer. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer who has had his work seen in the Library of Congress in an exhibit, who has been to the White House and had a little dinner with a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand people,
yes.
couple of thousand people, and who likes to hang out with celebrities like Anne Hathaway and George Clooney and Harry Belafonte. And today we're going to ask him about a new project that he started. But before we get to that, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you went to school, and when did you decide that you were going to become a photographer? What was the moment?
Well, I grew up in Ames, Iowa, went to school in the University of Missouri, and had started working as a photographer shooting for the local newspaper when I was in high school. Started shooting sports and news for them and kind of got hooked on it, stayed with it through college, and discovered it was a great way to drop into the lives of people from all walks of life. So it's a new adventure every single day.
And when did you start doing this professionally?
I was working my summers for different newspapers, and out of college I took a job with one that I had interned with, the New Orleans Times-Picayune, and went from there to the Orange County Register and then to the Miami Herald. For the first 10 years of my career was a newspaper photographer, but I was also shooting for magazines like Sports Illustrated.
Well, there's one I
I
want to ask you a question. I know at age 20, one of your photographs was in Life magazine.
Yes.
My question is, when you opened up that magazine for the very first time and saw your photograph, what was that like?
Just flooded with emotion. I mean, it's like, that's the kind of thing at that age you just can't imagine. And I think absolutely at that point I was pretty hooked for the possibility of going off and covering a major event and picking it up in a national magazine. And that was actually my first published magazine photograph. So started off at a very high level that I've tried to stay with.
Did you ever at that time think that it would get any better?
I think at that point I was really happy with everything that I could get a real.
Well, what was the photograph of, just so that our audience will have an idea?
That first photograph was, I went to cover Thurman Munson's funeral for United Press International, and I had a picture, just a fleeting moment of Billy Martin as he boarded a bus after the funeral. So I got this, great moment that showed his emotion and how he felt, and that was the photograph that ran huge in the New York Times the next day and ended up the following month in Life magazine.
Wow. And I bet you at that point you said it can't get any better than this.
Oh, absolutely.
And then 5 years later, what happened?
5 years later, I was fortunate enough to be part of a team that won the Pulitzer Prize for photographs of the 1984 Olympics. So to be part of a 3-photographer team to take that home was really wonderful.
So at age 25, you had a Pulitzer Prize under your belt.
Yes.
And then what happened?
Then actually I had the opportunity to, it's one of those things that opens a few doors for you. All that it really does is open the door. You still have to walk through on your own, but it got me in to see a number of magazines. So at that point I started shooting for magazines like Sports Illustrated, Rolling Stone, Fortune, and having an opportunity to spend more time on the shoots that I did than I really had as a newspaper photographer. Well,
when you spend time on the shoots, do you get to know the people you're shooting personally, or is it all just smile, cheese, hold that?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that I really wanted to do to make that connection. One of the things as a news and sports photographer, you shoot everything with a telephoto lens. So I was covering things like Super Bowls and NCAA Final Fours and World Series games, but everything you shoot is you're detached with a 600 millimeter lens. And what I really enjoyed was the times when I had half an hour, or an hour and a half to spend with the subjects and really get to know them.
Well, who was your most memorable shoot?
There've been so many over the years. I think spending Christmas Eve morning with Richard Branson on Necker Island to photograph him for Time magazine story on Virgin Galactic is always one that's top to tough.
Wow.
But I think beyond that, probably the one day that was really special is recently when I worked on the Art and Soul project, photographing Anne Hathaway in the morning in a studio, packing everything up and heading up to Tony Bennett's Central Park apartment and photographing Tony Bennett at home. There have been a lot of days I've been really, really fortunate to be in this business.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of people in our audience is probably saying, oh, he's just dropping names, but he's not, because you created a project and a book called Art and Soul. And in this book are photographs which are phenomenal. I'm just going to open up to any page. I have no idea what it is. But included in the photograph is what? A statement which says what?
Yeah, this was a project, one of the fantastic projects that was dropped in my lap. I do a lot of work with Sony, and I had a phone call from Kayla Lindquist, who runs the Sony Artisan program, and she asked how I would feel about doing a photo shoot with the Creative Coalition, where we photograph performing artists from film, television, stage, and the recording industry, and told their stories, where I'd do a portrait of them and then they'd write in a journal what the arts means to them or how the arts is important to our culture.
Well, who wrote the most poignant statement?
What I really loved about them is the diversity of everything. I think you have very heartfelt messages, and one of the great things is, just like the arts, there's really not a right or wrong. We had anything from two-word responses to it to Alfre Woodard and Ellen Burstyn wrote 2 pages on this and almost didn't want to stop. So I think the arts affects people in different ways, and I think one of the great things is it really is a testimonial to the creativity out there and how the arts encourages people to think outside the box.
Well, not only that, but to all of the people out there who think only in terms of money, the arts is a great pump in the economy of every city it's involved with.
Yeah, I think one of the pieces that was brought up throughout this was just the amount of income that Hollywood generates, and the notion that this is not money that's invested in the arts is not recouped. It absolutely is. Hollywood is the second largest export from the state of California, and it's one of the very few things the United States has a trade surplus on. So it's one of those ways that we kind of cut our deficit.
But it's even bigger than that, because communities all over the country have cultural programs and help organizations that just want to bring this culture, and they support them financially. And the support that they give them returns money into the economy of the different locales, and it's a big part of the environment, and most people don't understand that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's left a lasting impression. I mean, if you look at the all of the public art hotels projects that were done during the WPA that have held a lasting value. I mean, those hotels from that era still are the source of local pride in a lot of the areas around the country.
What's next for Brian Smith?
I just want to keep doing these type of wonderful projects. I think this has opened a lot of doors to me, made a lot of new friends as a result of this. Worked on another project this year with the Creative Coalition and WWE, an anti-bullying campaign called Be a Star. So there are a lot of projects that we're working on, all related to the arts, and it's just been a really fun journey that I hope never stops. And
if anybody wanted to see some of your photography, what's your website?
I'm briansmith.com, and the book is available here at Books and Books. Art and Soul. So that's right over here. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Stuart. It's been a pleasure. It's been a long time since we actually sat down and talked one-on-one. And very close to here, as I recall. Yeah, so. Yeah, not far on the next block. Yeah. So give my regards to Fazia, his incredible wife, who is really probably
the person behind the scenes that keeps
She
this
does all
thing
the
going.
hard work, and I just
Yeah.
take the credit.
I know, so I want to give her a little credit and a little shout out, because you're phenomenal, you're very talented, and you got a great partner, and that's all you can ask for in life, I know.
Thank you, Stuart.